Alright, hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be making a super first aid cream, all natural, really easy and cheap to make. A little bit time consuming, not too bad. Give yourself a couple hours to do this or so. But the plant that we're going to be working on, I actually made a video earlier this morning, which is what kind of set me off on this. It's one of my absolute favorite plants. It's the first one that I ever learned to use for medicine. It's really what kicked off me getting into medicinal herbs, plant identification, all that great stuff. This is called plantain. The variety that I'm using is called a broadleaf or greater plantain, excuse me. There's species of this all over the world. No, it is not a type of banana. It's actually we consider it to be a weed. It's a type of herb or so. When you want to identify it, it's found all over the place because back when we were first colonizing America, it got brought over on the ships. It was from Central and Northern Asia and also from Europe. The Native Americans called it the white man's footprint because everywhere they went, it got left behind because it just spread so incredibly fast. The main places that you're going to find this plant is where the ground has been torn up. It's going to be places like old trails, that kind of thing, places that you walk in your yard a lot and brought it down to dirt. Nature uses this plant to use its fibrous roots to actually bring the land back together and hold it together and reform it. That's why it spreads so very quickly. When you're trying to identify it, it can be anywhere from leaves that are maybe an inch long to leaves that are 5 or 6 inches long. It grows in a basal rosette form, which you can look that up if you want. I have a video on identifying plants based on their leaves. You can see how that grows and where the roots would be. Nice little fibrous roots, all growing out from the center, low to the ground. I did get a fresher leaf for you to look at. I should get up so that you can see a little bit better. If you look at this leaf, you notice that it has very smooth margins. Comes up to a rounded point at the top. It does have a stem off the bottom, and that's one good identifier is that you'll notice whenever you pull these off, it has these little strings that come off, and I'll actually do a video on that one day. You can actually use those to make fishing lines and sutures out of really big leaves, but it'll always have those little fibers coming out the end. And then it always has 5 lateral veins that you can see from both the front and the underside of the leaf. They're very protruded on the other underside. You'll see 3 main veins coming up, and then there's always 2 slightly harder to see and shorter veins on either side of that. So that's the plantain leaf. If your plant is seeding at the time, ours are already dried up, but I did manage to find one so that you can kind of get the idea. This will be coming up from around the center of the plant, and these can actually hold about 20,000 seeds on them. They're very small seeds. That's what it would look like standing up out of the ground all over the place, but they'll be a nice bright green when they're actually still growing and maturing. This has already dried, so it's the brown color. But what I like about this plant so much is that it can be used for everything. I can make so many videos on this plant. It can be used from everything from nicotine detoxers to flower replacements to what we're going to use it for today, which I'll go on with. Sorry, something just fell behind me or something. Spoke. Jeez Louise. It's also edible. It's high in calcium, vitamins A, C, and K. It's very nutritious. You'll oftentimes actually find it in the mixed salads that you buy. Also, a lot of times the seeds will actually contaminate the grains in the cereals that you buy, things like that. So it can be used for so many different things, but what we're going to use it today for is making first aid cream. What makes this such a good first aid cream is 3 main components that it has in it. One is called Oitment. Oitment is a great antimicrobial agent, so it's going to really clean your wound. Then you have allotonin. Allotonin helps cellular growth, and it also helps tissue regeneration. So it's going to help you heal up faster. It's going to help the skin heal faster. What's really great about it is that if you use it on deeper cuts, it actually prevents scarring. It won't depending on the scar and your skin and how you react, it won't necessarily 100% prevent the scar, but it will reduce it greatly. Even if you start using it after the wound is almost healed and put it on that scar, it will help. And the last thing that it's great for is that it has mucilage in it. Mucilage is a pain reliever, and it also just helps with the comfort of the skin. It relieves itching, soreness, all that kind of stuff, because this plant has anti-inflammatory products to it, so it's going to relieve pain that way. It's also a blood coagulant, so it's going to stop the bleeding faster for you. And then all the other things that we just talked about. So it's amazing for making first aid cream. You can use it just like I used it in the video I made for helping your teeth, and use it on your skin that way. Really mash it up, release the juices, and rub it on that wound, or a bug bite, poison ivy, anything to that effect. It will help it out really, really well with. But the reason that we're making it into a first aid cream is because this is going to make it so that you can store it all year round and it'll stay good. So in order to make your first aid cream, the different things that you're going to need is 1 petroleum jelly or Vaseline, if you want to call it, which I have here already dished out in my portion. You're going to want to collect your plantain, obviously. You're also going to want some sort of a wooden spoon or spatula. I suggest a spatula because it makes it a lot easier to get into the corner of your pans versus a spoon. The reason I use wood is because if you're using plastic and metals and things like that, then you're releasing the chemicals from that into your first aid cream, things like bipardonazole A, that kind of thing. You don't want to get that in there. I mean, it is first aid cream. You want to do this even though I'm doing it outside. When you do it, you do want to do this as sanitary as you possibly can because it is for medical uses. Then you're going to need scissors just to chop your plant up as much as you can. Or you can use your fingers if you want to. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're going to want some sort of cheesecloth or jelly cloth. And then you're going to want 2 different pans that you can use to make a double boiler. So all they need to be is heat resistant, and one needs to be able to fit inside the other with a relatively good amount of space between the two, between the edges. And then you're just going to want some sort of glass sealing container that you can use to store your first aid cream in after you create it. So the first thing that you're going to do, which I've already done, so it does take a while, you don't want to sit there and watch me do that, is when you collect your plantain, the first thing you're going to do is wash it. And again, just like I said in the other video, when you collect anything from the wild or from your yard for eating, or especially for making medicine or anything to that effect, you want to make sure that it is not coming from a place that's going to have been sprayed with fungicides, that it's going to have been sprayed with pesticides or any chemicals to that effect, fertilizers, anything like that. You want it to be a 100% natural, chemical-free. And you're also going to want to inspect your leaves as you harvest them. Just make sure that there's sometimes you'll get those little eggs on the bottom of it from bugs. You might have rotting. You're going to want to watch for mold, fungus, etc. Just be really clean and safe and sanitary when you do this kind of thing. Ooh, sorry, the smoke keeps getting me. Find a better spot to sit. But when you dry your leaves, you can dry it in whatever form you want to dry them in. You're going to just take the leaves. You're not going to use the seeds or the roots for this, just the leaves. You want to fully dry them. Make sure that they are 100% dry. I'm actually going to move a little closer, you guys. Try to avoid the smoke so I can talk to you more easily. You're going to want to make sure that it is 100% dry. The reason that we do this is because if there's any water left in your leaves, your ointment's going to rot like that. It's going to mold right over. Water is necessary for mold to grow, so you just want to make sure all your water's out. You can dry it however you want, whether you want to sun dry, hang dry, use a dehydrator, anything to that effect. The only thing that you want to know is that when you're drying any type of plant for medicinal usage, you want to, I'm going to back up, jeez. You want to make sure that it never goes above 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it goes over 85 degrees, essential oils actually begin to evaporate. And your essential oils are what contain all your medicinal properties, your nutrition. If you're using it for fragrance, it contains all your fragrance, all that good stuff. So just however you dry it, make sure it's 100% dry, and make sure that it doesn't go over 85 degrees. Now, next step is to create our double boiler. If you haven't used a double boiler before, the idea is to slowly heat what you're actually trying to cook, so that it doesn't actually cook it, it just heats it. So what we've got is, I've got my 2 pans. I'm going to put my smaller one right in the middle of it. And I forgot to mention earlier, I'm sorry, you do need some water, because I'm going to take my water and just pour a decent amount in the bigger pot. And the idea that's what's going to happen is it's going to heat up this water before it ever heats up the inside pan. And that's going to make it so we don't want to cook our petroleum. That way it's not going to cook it, it's not going to burn the bottom of it, it's just going to heat it up enough to melt it. So then we'll take our Vaseline and we'll scoop it right into the little pan, if we can. And the ratio that we're using whenever you make any type of ointment like this is for every 7 ounces of your petroleum jelly, you're going to add 1 ounce of your dried herbs. Now, that sounds like a lot, but for example, if you think that's a lot, if we can get that in the middle there we go, you'll notice that the entire contents of the jar that I have here, if I can get it on view, that I showed you earlier, that's one of the larger sized pasta sauce jars. In here, I have just over 14 grams. 14 grams is half an ounce. An ounce is 28 grams. So in my container here, I have 3.5 ounces of my petroleum jelly. So it's actually a lot of herb for how much petroleum jelly that you're using. So don't get discouraged like you think it's not going to be enough. You actually don't want to use more than that because you never want to make something too strong. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to set it right over my fire and let it sit, stirring it occasionally until this is nice and melted down into a good liquid. Again, you don't want to cook this though. If you see it start to boil, you probably need more water. It shouldn't bubble at all, actually, that would be cooking it. You're going to need more water in your pan, so just keep a good eye on it until it's melted down. Alright, so now that the petroleum jelly has melted down, sorry about the smoke, whoa, clouding the view. That's the problem with doing this on the chimney. Clouded up. I've also taken my herbs, my plantain, and chopped it up nice and fine. There are a few bigger pieces that I could probably cut up a little bit more, but most of it's nice and fine little pieces. Best way, quickest way I find to do that is I dumped it all in the pot and then I just take my scissors and I just go at it over and over again just while it's in the pot, chopping multiple at a time. It goes a lot faster that way. But as you can see, that is a lot of plant for the little bit amount of petroleum jelly that I have. So I'm just going to add it a little bit at a time, let it kind of mush up and get how it is when you cook cabbage. It'll take up a little less space and then I'll add more and more and more. You do not have to use your full ounce. This is the strongest that you'll want to make it. You can make it less potent if you want to, or if you don't feel like you have the time or the room to fit it into your petroleum jelly. So I'm just going to add in a little at a time. Couple little handfuls. See how it sits there and soaks it right up. And then I'll grab my spatula, I'll give that a little stir, give it a couple minutes, add some more. And then once you have all the plant product that you're going to use in your pot, we're going to leave it there for about an hour. Sorry, I keep having to move because of the smoke. You're going to leave it there for about an hour or more. Sometimes I like to do an hour and a half or 2. It's up to you. But at least an hour to get all the nice essential oils pulled out and into the Vaseline. Stir it occasionally as you're doing it, and just make sure that, again, it doesn't overheat, but also make sure it doesn't start solidifying while it's sitting there for an hour. So a lot easier on a stove to control your heat. On a fire, you're really going to have to watch it. But like I said, just make sure it stays that nice consistent liquid. As you can see, the plant matter is boiling down. And it's, or not boiling down because you don't want to boil. It's heating down, I guess, if you want to call it that. And that's all of it. I just fit that in there. And to reiterate again, if you don't want to use that much plant material, you do not have to. That is just the limit on how much you'd want to use. Alright, now that the hour has passed, you can see what this looks like here. About the same as it did before, just a little bit darker. So it's been staying like that, the nice liquid, for an hour. We have to strain this out through our cheesecloth into our glass container. I'm just using some of these little, oh, that doesn't make it so that you can see, jeez. Some of these little guys. Just get them in the canning section at a store, or, you can use whatever you have, as long as it's glass. And elastic bands are helpful. I'm not going to worry about it because I have the cone. I'm just going to set my cheesecloth right in my funnel. And then slowly dump this in and try not to lose my cheesecloth in the process. And you do want a cheesecloth that is a couple layers thick, at least. And you also don't just drain the liquid out. Actually put your material in there, because you're going to squeeze and drain all your petroleum jelly off of your plant matter. Ooh, might have needed a bigger piece. We'll see. I might have to do this in portions here. I thought I had a big enough piece. I'm just going to ball this up inside there. And when you squeeze this, do watch your hands. It is a hot oil-like substance, and it will burn. And I actually already need to switch to another container here to catch the last little bit. It may have a little bit of space. We'll see if we can fit it all in there. I'm just going to keep squeezing this until I've got everything I can out of here. It's not as hot as the last time I made it. So this has to say, remove some of that top stuff there so I don't get it in. And it will take some time to really sit here and get all of it off the plants. But you definitely want to do that because you want to make sure you get all your medicinal properties in there as concentrated as you can. Alright, you can see the color that came out. Now all we have to do is cap it and let it solidify back in a normal petroleum jelly consistency. And we'll store this in a cool, dark place. It doesn't have to be totally dark. I just wouldn't leave it in direct sunlight, because just like I said before, if it gets above 85 degrees, just like when you're drying your plants, essential oils do evaporate and you'll lose your medicinal properties. Typically I'd keep it for about a year. You can technically keep it longer as long as it doesn't mold or anything. It just might lose its potency and not really have the effect that it does from the beginning. But just so that you guys can see when it's solidified, I brought this down. This is a bigger batch that I made last year, and I mean it lasted forever, but again, it's probably starting to lose its potency. You can see what that looks like when it's done. Again, looks just like it's back to normal petroleum jelly. It just has a little bit of color to it, and the way I can tell this is losing its potency too is that when I first made this, it was a bit darker green, and now it's kind of starting to lose that green and go back to that yellowish color. So it's probably not as good as it was in the beginning. It's not going to do me any harm, but it's better to have a fresh batch that's really going to work well. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you get a chance to do this on your own, because it's really handy to have. It's nice to do the natural thing, a little bit better for your body, and it honestly works really, really well. The first time I made it, probably about 3 or 4 years ago or so, I was extremely excited the first time I used it, because I couldn't believe, I mean, I used it on a little cut on my finger, but I couldn't believe how fast it healed using that. So definitely go for it, guys. Enjoy, just really take your time, make sure to do everything really cleanly, all that good stuff, so because you don't want to harm yourself. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you check out our other videos on our page. I have more stuff about plants, plant identification, making dyes. We have camping videos, all that good stuff. So make sure you guys check it out. I'll have some more medicinal plant videos coming up if you're interested. And I will see you guys next time. Enjoy your day.